Welcome to the Cash Flow Project Podcast. Are you looking to better your financial situation by increasing your cash flow? Too busy to hunt for real estate deals or don't know where to start? Then you're in the right spot. Join us as we dive in and talk about investing for cash flow using multifamily real estate.
Welcome to the Cash Flow Project. I'm your host, Vince Gethings with Tri-City Equity Group. And today we have Tony Castronovo on the show. Tony is the founder and managing partner of Novo Multifamily Group and is a multifamily real estate entrepreneur with over 7 years of experience in acquisition, underwriting, contract negotiation, due diligence, syndication, capital raising, construction, renovation, operations, asset management, and overall asset strategy implementation. Tony's currently invested in over 650 units, including a combination of general partner, limited partner, and co-GP and independent ownership, which I just found out has a name called IRO. So we learned something new today. And Tony is also a seasoned business management consultant, utilizing over 25 years of experience in advertising clients on project portfolio investment management. He holds higher education degrees in engineering and construction management. Tony, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Vince. Man, I think I need a nap or something after all that. I'm tired. It's a lot of stuff there.
I was trying to do it in one breath and I couldn't do it. So anyway, I'm very excited. We just spent the last 15 minutes kind of brainstorming, what this show could be about, what value we can bring to the audience. And, I think we've determined that it's going to need to be multiple episodes because you have so much value, so much content, and I'm really excited about it. So let's just get right into it. Because tell the guests or the audience, who you are and, what's your why? How'd you get down this path to where you are now?
Oh man, the why question. Well, first of all, thank you for the intro. I've been in the real estate space for, I guess, about 7.5 years or so. And we can kind of unpack, exactly how I got started in the pathway that I took. But I think the why primarily started with, I just wanted to be able to live my life on my own terms. I know a lot of times we hear this term financial freedom and people talk about how many doors they need, how much income they need, they want to quit their job and all that. Quitting your job isn't the goal. I mean, some people actually like their job and that is totally fine. But if you don't, or you want more control on how you spend your time and where you put your energy and being able to see the benefits of that, the fruit of the labor, if you will, then, entrepreneurship is definitely a pathway. And I think for me, that was just always part of my DNA. My dad had run a business and always worked for himself really for his entire career. And, my mom supported him in that business. So I'm used to seeing that, and there's pros and cons, of course, but I think the ultimate why was just, I love being able to drive my own day and my time. And I think if you're kind of a disciplined person and, can get up and attack the day and know exactly what you're going to go after, I think it can fit very well and bring you a lot of happiness.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree more, and especially on the kind of the coaching, mentoring side. A lot of people are like, oh, I need this amount of money to be free and all that thing. They just focus on the dollar and cents. I'm like, don't focus on that. Focus on what the end goal is. Like the end goal is time freedom. And like you said, just do what I want, when I want, and have that flexibility. And, the money is just a tool that's going to get you there. So having that mental paradigm shift to that, the goal is not the money, but, the goal is the lifestyle, the time freedom, and everything like that. And how you're going to get there is by being financially free, by having that, multiple streams of income. So that is awesome. All right. So, one of the topics that we were brainstorming early on was kind of how you got started into real estate. And, you had a kind of a unique way of starting, especially, with the 401k. So I guess let's start there is, why did you pick real estate to be that avenue for you? And kind of what were those first progression of, going from 0 to 1 on that path to the first real estate deals?
Well, I'm going to just quickly take us back a little further. So back in about 2001, 2002 timeframe, I got the bug to do real estate. And I think where the bug came from was I had a background in construction. In a former life, if you will, back in the 80s and 90s, I worked in construction and just loved all of that. The part that I didn't love was that one day, I was doing a lot of like large commercial, industrial type of construction, and I'm carrying a 20-foot piece of 4-inch steel pipe on my shoulder with somebody else. So we're each carrying it through the mud, and I looked in front of me, and the guy who was on the other end of the pipe, he was 40 years old, and I was 20 at the time. And I knew how much he was making because we were all like union workers. And I was like, he's making the same money I'm making, and he's 20 years older than me. I've got to find a better way. And I cannot continue down this pathway for the next 20 years. But I loved the idea of being in real estate and construction. And so fast forward a little bit more in the 2001, 2002 timeframe. And I had an ex-wife that her dad was into buying single family homes. He was buying these homes in Columbus, Ohio. He was doing the work himself. His wife was helping him out. They were, an elderly couple, and, being a landlord. And it just seemed like, wow, you can make that kind of money, and use the skills that I had. That sounds pretty cool. That's what I knew of real estate back at that time, was to buy a single family house, fix it up, rent it out, and have this mailbox money. Well, back then, I thought I could make a run at starting a business while I had a job and so forth. I ended up having twin boys right at 2002 timeframe, and I had a new job, and just life got in the way and put the brakes on that. Not a problem. Fast forward, unfortunately, took about 10 more years, but back in 2014, the spark came back. And at that time, I was better prepared for it. I had been working in management consulting for quite some time, had a process and systems background, knew a lot more about managing finances. And so I was ready to take the plunge. But to the finance angle, I really didn't have a whole lot of equity to work with. And so, what you and I were joking about earlier, Vince, was, I convinced my wife to allow me to cash out our 401k. And that was kind of a bit of a sales job, because I kept looking at it year after year and going, man, it's up, down, and this and that. And we went through some tough times where I saw my 401k just come way down. And I was like, man, I'm sitting here betting my retirement on some fund manager to do a good job managing my money. And I thought, surely I can bet on me. And if I'm going to pay a 10% penalty to cash out my 401k and pay another 10% on taxes, can I make up 20% of that value? And how long will it take me? So that was the sales job that I gave to my wife before we got started.
That is awesome. You did that. I honestly had literally the exact same thought process, and I ended up liquidating my 401k and IRAs almost the exact same way. I did the math. I'm like, how long is it going to take to make this back? I projected. I was like, if I can make it back in 2 years, I'm good. It took me 6 months. 6 months to pay off and break back even. But now I have full control. That was the exact same thought process that you did, was you're giving your complete faith in your retirement to some person you've never met. And you don't know what their morals are, their values, their ethics, what their motivations are, over in Wall Street somewhere. And I need to have control. And I think you put it the best way I've ever heard is it's time, to bet on myself. And that's essentially what a lot of people, don't want to do. They don't want to, I guess, have that responsibility. I don't know, but I'm really glad that you took the jump on that. And that is huge for a lot of people. They don't want to touch it. They don't want to touch their 401k. They try to find other ways to, fund their first deals. But for me, the opportunity cost of not doing it was so great that I didn't have a choice. Like in my head, I convinced myself like, this is the path. Like I'm burning the ships. Real estate is the way, and I fully committed into it. So, okay. Yeah. So you liquidated the 401k, then what'd you do with it?
Well, and let me say this too, real quick, is that I'm not advocating, to like totally throw your retirement account at risk here, and if you've never done anything in the real estate space, to just say, hey, we're cashing it all up. There's many ways to do it. I mean, for me, I ripped the Band-Aid. I burned the boats, if you will, like you said. But if you're getting, a company match and it's free money, if you will, to maintain that account and so forth, there's nothing wrong with that. Do that. But for me, it was just an opportunity to leverage some capital to get started. And so to answer your question, Vince, I mean, we got started with that, with really chasing after that first single family home. I read all the books, and actually I think, Bigger Pockets was around, but I don't even think I knew about it at that time. But I was reading books. I was just, talking to people, and everybody always said, you got to farm a neighborhood. You got to get to know it. You got to know what the comps are. And, is it a rental neighborhood? And so I think it took about 4 months to find that first property. It's crazy, and how did I find the property? Well, I was such a novice. I had no idea. I actually walked on, I remember this, on a Saturday afternoon, I walked into a Keller Williams office, and I said, I need a real estate agent. I need to find a rental property to buy. And some poor guy that was, sitting there on Saturday afternoon in the office and didn't have any sales calls to go on, he was like, I'll take this poor soul on. And he worked with me for 4 months. We put in, no exaggeration, we put in over 20 offers. We looked at over 75 properties. And we weren't putting in lowball offers. The problem was that when you're looking at a single family home that is on market, then you're basically competing with every owner occupant out there who's willing to pay more because they have emotion into it. And as investors, sometimes I think we got to pull out the emotion and look at the business side of it. So we got that first one after 4 months, but it was a diamond in the rough. It was a property in one of the best submarkets in the Houston area. We got it pretty good price, didn't need a ton of work, and I was fully capable to do all the work myself. I don't necessarily recommend all that, but it was a great first home to get started. And, we can unpack that if you like.
I don't know about unpacking it, but I guess the follow-up to that would be, so you got your first single family, you did the BRRRR strategy. Did you do BRRRR on that?
We did do BRRRR on that. It wasn't the best BRRRR because we got it at a good price. We minimized the capital expenditures because we did a lot of our own work. But to be honest, there wasn't a ton of room in that one for like the traditional BRRRR. But we pulled some cash out. Yeah.
Okay. So you did a BRRRR on it. You refinanced it, and then got a renter in there. It's operating. Then what did you do? You kept with the single family. How many more of those did you do?
So we kept going. So we learned a lot from that. We learned can't do the work ourselves because it just takes too long. I was putting in 18-hour days on a weekend and working nights after my day job. It was just too much. And we also learned about processes and systems. My first time being a landlord, I had no idea. I thought it was okay for tenants to actually drop off checks at my house. we laugh, right? I mean, these
Yeah.
are things that who knows, right? So we turned everything electronic at that point, and now everybody's paying, online, and they're completing, their applications and their lease signing, and everything's online, everything's systematized. But we got into properties 2 through 9, actually. I kept going and built a small portfolio of single family homes. It was a very repeatable process and model. Loved it. It was fun. We were basically picking up property about every 3 months and doing about 4 properties a year. I did that for about 3-4 years before I realized that that was great, but it's kind of like putting one more log on the fire, and I wanted a bigger fire. I wanted to really scale my business, and that's where I started looking at multifamily.
So how many units did you get up to, single family?
We got up to 9 because we were doing a little bit of flipping in there too, but we ended up holding, actually we held 8. And by the time we sold a portfolio of single family homes to get out.
Got it. How were you funding these? How are you financing these?
So it was a combination. I mean, so I started with the 401k money, but eventually I realized that I'm going to run out of that. And so I kind of parked some to be able to do all my rehab, the capital dollars. And I started leveraging hard money. And then I graduated up to private money, where I had kind of a small group of private lenders that I could reach out to, and within a text message away, find out in 10 minutes that I could go fund a deal and close in 4 days.
Great. So you skipped the conventional route.
Conventional was the way that we did the BRRRR strategy, because we were basically doing a model where we would acquire the property, renovate it, put a tenant in place, and refinance out in 90 days or less. So they were all on conventional loans by the time we're refied out.
How many of those did you have?
Well, that was the 8 that we ended up holding. Yeah.
What did that do to like one of the issues that I ran into with the conventional loans, because that's essentially what I did as well, was that my personal credit got destroyed. Because I had 6 loans, 20 units, 6 loans, all on conventional loans. So I had great terms, 30-year, whatever, AMs and all that. But my DTI was like 80% when we looked at it. And, whenever I would go to, say, get like a car loan or something like that, because they would take all of the debt off these conventional loans, but they wouldn't take any of the income because it didn't mature or season or whatever term they want to use. A lot of those banks won't use unless it's 2 or 3 years old, of taxes of rental income. So that was like, a big aha moment for me of this single family BRRRR conventional thing is not sustainable. If you want to have any kind of personal credit worthiness at all. Cause I said, I got, my butt handed to me with some of these lenders. After like about the 6th one is when I had like that aha moment. So I guess, did you have any of that with the 8 single families that you had? And then kind of what was the lesson learned and progression out of that?
Well, so yes, I've been monitoring my credit, 15 plus years. And it's funny, I go and I look at the chart where you see your annual credit score, in the months and how it fluctuates. And that time period when I was doing the single family home purchase, oh my God, it was like Death Valley.
Yeah.
And I mean, today I'm about an 840 credit score.
Nice.
And back then I was in the 600s going, oh my God, what is going on here?
Yeah, never missed a payment in your life, but still like a 630, right? That's where I was.
Yeah.
And I was like, they didn't teach me this in the books I was reading. This wasn't mentioned, on the strategy. So how did, like, what was the kind of, path out of that, because you're in the single families now, you did some BRRRRs. You did some house flips. Awesome. You got private money. That is, that's a great thing. So I still flip house on the side too. And those private lenders they're nice because then you don't have to go through the hoops. I still have a line of credit too that I can pull from. So nothing gets, no long drawn out processes. So that's awesome. You're able to get that and get the hard money or the private money. And so now you have the SFRs, then what?
Well, I think, the way I kind of realized that, I mean, I got to say, Vince, that I remember having a spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet was basically laying out all the different debtors that I had, because I got contractors to pay. I've got lines of credit I'm pulling from. I did a HELOC. I had some short-term loans. I had all kinds of funding sources because I was trying to move more quickly. I was trying to do acquisitions, and I had to spend the money on the capital improvements and ideally overlap some of these projects so I could keep going. And when I was doing BRRRR, I wasn't pulling out 100% of what I put into it. I was always leaving something in the deal because they had some equity, but they didn't have that much equity where, I could just kind of have infinite returns and pull out all my capital. So eventually I'm sprinkling in capital on all these deals. And, I had this spreadsheet of all these different debtors, and I had their interest rates, and I prioritized each one of them and said, the wheels ever came off, who would I be paying first? Right. And that's a scary place to be. And I never missed a payment, of course, but I mean, what if something went wrong? So the lesson I took away from that was, I'm not really running this like a business. I'm Tony. I'm just running this like a person who's trying to make a difference in this. And so when I was looking at multifamily, I was like, this is my opportunity to kind of wipe the slate clean of all that debt and truly buy a large building and put third-party property management on it and really run it as a business and be well capitalized. That's the huge lesson that I got away with that was you need to have capital to be able to not be dipping into all these different credit lines and credit cards and all this stuff. So when we bought that first multifamily property, we made sure that we put the capital improvements into the loan. So when we got our first bank loan on that, they were funding 80% of our rehab dollars. And yeah, we had to pull some money in, but it wasn't the kind of money that we were used to in the single family space.
Got it. So I want to touch back on that. But first, I think we might have skipped the transition moment of the single family. Did we talk about that? Like the jump to single family to multifamily, that first 20 unit?
Well, so what we just talked about was kind of that realization that there's got to be a better way and how to scale and kind of looking at the financial side of it.
Because most people never, the reason I want to go back to that and like that single point, because most people never make that jump. They will either stay in single family or they give up and never make the jump to larger multifamily. So I guess what was kind of the thought? So we had that realization, and then what were like the next like 2 or 3 either thoughts, action items, or whatever you did to get into that first 20 unit. And then we can go quick 10,000 foot view of the numbers and project of that. But that moment right there is like 99% of people will never make that jump. So I want to see what that is.
Yeah, it was scary because even though I convinced myself that it was the right thing to do, for 4 years, I was building this portfolio, and it was something that I worked very hard for, was proud of. It was cash flowing pretty well. And I was building equity one log at a time, and so it was hard to say, okay, we're done. And some people keep their single family portfolio when they get into multifamily, but I didn't have the luxury of just having all this excess capital. And so the way I was going to fund multifamily was to get out of single family. And as I was looking at it, I was like, okay, if I sell off each home one by one to a retail customer, I'm going to get top dollar. Because, I mean, we all know even today, the market's super hot. It was hot back then as well. And I was going to get top dollar. But what I wanted to do was move a little more quickly. And I also recognized that there'd be an opportunity to do a 1031 exchange to save on some of the capital gains and the taxes. So packaging it was the best move for me. So I basically kind of a DIY guy at heart. You know, I've since recognized the value that brokers bring to the table. But back then I was like, I'm just going to package it together. I can build an offering memorandum for this. And, you know, got some examples off the internet and colleagues. And I just used my own network. And within a week, I had multiple offers. And we basically sold it essentially for asking price. And so we got the opportunity to 1031 into multifamily. And the way that I was looking at it was I want to draw a 2-hour radius around where I am, realizing that I'm not going to be doing as much of the work, but I still am a hands-on guy. I want to be there, I want to touch it. And knowing how much capital I had, knowing the radius of where I wanted to be, it really narrowed down, you know, what properties we should be looking for.
Outstanding. And you found one, found a 20 unit.
Found a 20 unit. Yep. It needed quite a bit of work. It was kind of that perfect property, right? All the things that we're taught to go after, the mom and pop operation, right? This was a guy who was 82 years old, who'd been running this thing for about 40 years. And, you know, he was done. He wanted to tap out and, you know, hit the beach, literally. and you know, it was, the numbers wise, it was on average $500 a month rents. We purchased that property for $980,000. Did kind of a traditional community bank loan at, we didn't have great terms back then. We had a 80% LTV on it, actually 80% LTC, I should say. And then we had a 20-year AM at a 5.25% interest rate. So by today's standards, it's not a very great loan.
LTC is good though. That's usually pretty good for a first time, you know, commercial loan. The other terms, but they're of the times, right?
And we had 12 months interest only. So, you know,
that's good.
For me, I'm like, oh, this is awesome. You know?
Yeah. A lot of community banks don't do interest only. So that you got 80% LTC. For those listening, LTC is the construction the construction costs are wrapped into the loan. So the bank's actually going to fund a large portion, 80% of the construction cost. So if it was $100,000 in construction, the bank would fund 80% of $80,000 of the construction cost. So that's what LTC is versus LTV, which is just the value of the property, and you front all of the construction costs. So seeing an 80% LTC loan with 12 months interest only is pretty good from a community bank.
Yeah. And I mean, the downside is that was recourse financing. So for your listeners, you know, recourse basically puts it on your balance sheet. So not too dissimilar from kind of what we did in the single family space, but the difference was that it was one loan, and we were able to clear out all that other debt that we talked about, you know, trying to fund our single family business. And it was all baked into this business, this property.
Nice. Okay. So you found the perfect 20 unit to build your company off of. And you still have that property?
We just sold it about a month ago. Yeah. So we never really intended to hold it for 3 years. I mean, I thought it was something we'd hang on to for quite some time. But I think two main reasons for selling. One was that if we're not at the top of the market right now, we are darn near close to it. And it's just a good time for sellers. And we got a great price on it. And the other side of it was that, it was an aging property. And while we did a ton of work on it from exterior CapEx and interior renovations, I just started kind of sensing that this might not be something I want to hang on to for a generation. So we're just kind of taking our chips away from the blackjack table and calling it a day on that one. But fantastic property for two reasons. One was financially, it was a great property. We refied it twice in 3 years. And so each time we refied it, there was a reason for that. We used that capital to get into other deals and other opportunities. But we ended up walking away after 3 years with a greater than 30% IRR on it. All in all, we pulled out over 800 and something thousand of cash on that property. And it was like a 1.9x multiple, and just a fantastic property from a financial sense. But the second reason why it was such a great property is that opportunity to get into other deals. It gave us experience, it gave us confidence, it gave us credibility, and it gave us leverage. So refining it the first time allowed us to pull out the necessary capital to actually take on our second multifamily deal. And then the second time we refied it, we basically allowed our second property to have a line of credit for working capital and additional capital dollars to renovate. So for me personally, it benefited me because I was getting a monthly check off of that. And the property benefited because it had additional capital that it didn't have to source from, a financial institution.
I love it. So that was you did a lot on that first deal. A lot of people don't have that opportunity to, get into a value add mom and pop deal where they kind of have to rebuild the property, kind of essentially from the ground up, as far as the systems, the processes and everything like that, because there probably was none. And I know what those mom and pops are like the last one we bought, same thing, 80 plus years old, been running the property for 40 years. We go get the rent roll and the financials and everything like that. I got an expense report on the back of a utility bill, like handwritten, and the rent roll was in like that old yellow, like ledger paper. She's like, this was a 102 unit property. And she's like, here you go. And it was just like, the box of just like, handwritten notes that she had for us to do this. So I know the work that has to go into it, and you're looking at this like, oh, wow, great buying opportunity. But then now it's on you to kind of rebuild this entire property. And then in that process, you're probably, learning a bunch as you're creating the systems and processes and branding of it and everything like that. You were able to refinance it a couple of times. So go through that experience of, having to work with lenders and going through the refinance, especially the cash out. So what were some of the obstacles that you didn't expect on that first 20 unit?
So we talked to the bank about this perfect business plan. Every tenant was month to month. So we had 20 tenants, and we told the bank, we said, each month we're gonna move out 2 tenants, renovate 2 units, and then bring in new tenants, rinse and repeat. And that was great for the contractor. He was like, oh yeah, no problem. 2 units a month. I know how to organize my schedule, my crew, because it's 2 units every month. And the bank was like, great, you're going to keep up your occupancy. We have no concern about you covering the debt, blah, blah, blah. Well, come on. Who wants to move into a turd of a property that only has 2 units renovated and 18 units that are awful, right? So that was the huge lesson. Thankfully, we learned it in the first month. And so we ripped the Band-Aid off and we moved out 7 tenants the next month. And we brought in, double the crews and, went a lot faster on the renovations. But that was scary because as soon as we started doing that, some of the tenants who were there saw that and got spooked and said, I'm moving out because my number's going to get called. And all of a sudden, here we are looking at 25% occupancy on this property. And we're like, how are we going to cover, the debt and this and that? And, so that's important to be well capitalized coming into it. And that thankfully was a short period of time. We basically, renovated the entire complex in 7 months, and we're at 100% occupancy at the end of those 7 months.
No, that's awesome. And you made a big point there about kind of pivoting and staying agile when you have your plan. Because a lot of that business plan you just outlined there, like, oh, we're going to systematically, tackle this. And it doesn't work like that, because what's going to happen is exactly what you happen. And I've seen it over and over again. It happens on all my deals. We just plan for it. I might plan on, churning 3 units, non-renewing three residents and, getting 3 new in there. But what's in reality, what's going to happen is I have 3 people I gave notice to vacate to, 2 people skip, and I'm going to have, 3 evictions, right? And that's what actually happened that month. When my vacancy, I was only planning on having 3, now I have 9, and being able to pivot and adapt to that. So I've done it, multiple times now, that you just plan for it now. That scenario that you just described was not a one-off, right? That's pretty much what's going to happen on every property. So just plan for, especially on a value add, those deep value adds, plan for the high vacancy, at least the first 6 months. You said you're 7 months, you're back on track.
Oh yeah. By 7 months, that
was good. That's really fast. That's really fast. Most people usually takes them 2 years. Once they had that, like, oh crap moment of, 30% of people just moved out, it usually takes them about 18 months, 2 years to get back on track if they weren't prepared for it. And prepared meaning like having the crews to turn those units, having the marketing turned on to get leads, and then of course being well capitalized to make sure you can pay the bills, pay everybody. So that was a big lesson learned. I'm glad you had the cash to do that. You didn't to make it weather that storm, and you weren't in hot water there. And then had something else, but I forgot. So that is also 7 months back on track, and then operated. Oh, I remember. One of the things, so one of the key points you said was, you have this lead flow coming in. Maybe you're spending money on marketing and you get these people coming in. And if you only have like 1 or 2 renovated units and the rest of the property looks like crap, then they're probably just going to either skip on your leasing agent or, not show up, or just completely just drive by and be like, yep, I'm not pulling in there. So there was a book I read, and luckily I read this very early on. It was Multifamily Millions by Dave Lindahl. Was one of the first multifamily, once I, got down the multifamily journey, I was like, okay, Amazon multifamily books, right? And that was like the number 1 rated book. That one, I think, and then Joe Fairless's syndication, the book on syndication or something like that, were like kind of like the top 2 at the time that were out. And Dave Lindahl he has a chapter in there in that book, Multifamily Millions. I was like, you have to start the exterior renovations first, no matter how much you want to do the interior renovations, because you think you're going to get higher rents. Like, okay, well, if I put, granite and stainless steel and, LVP flooring, then I'm going to get a $200 rent bump. And in reality, it's not going to happen, because the people are never going to make it to the door, right? They're never going to make it to the unit. They're going to skip on you. The property looks like crap. So on him, he's like, you have to stop. And the phase 1 of your construction always has to be curb appeal, landscaping, exterior, fix any kind of exterior deferred maintenance, paint, touch up painting, soffit, trim, gutters, windows, blinds, make sure the property is presentable, the signage is good and not sun faded and leaning over, and the trash isn't overflowing, the dumpster corrals look good, the parking lot's resealed and striped, right? And that's what, Jake Cinziano, he harps on that one. It's like the first thing they do on every property is the reseal and stripe, because it's such a good ROI for that investment. But once we started doing that, it's focused at phase 1 on the exterior. Then now the people are driving onto the property, those leads are driving onto the property, and they're like, okay, this place is, it's something, I live here. It looks like they're taking care of it. Looks like they're, whatever. And then they get to the door. And then if you only have 1 or 2 renovated units at the time, that doesn't really matter, because they're not going into the rest of the units. They're only seeing their renovated unit. Right. So that was kind of the lesson learned there. And then now we can systematically, move people out and renovate the units, but the outside of the property, that curb appeal has to be looking good. So now that's the very first thing we do, is just exterior overhaul, curb appeal, day 1, hour 1 of a property.
But you're hitting on one thing. You're kind of teetering on something that's the difference between single family and multifamily. In single family, your new tenant doesn't show up and say, this house has a really bad reputation.
Yeah.
Who the heck
Exactly.
knows about your house?
Yeah.
That apartment complex that you just bought has been around and been an apartment complex for years and has been mismanaged and has awful reviews and has just been dilapidated for years and years. And now you own it. And so you have to change that brand, that image. So signage, like you said, that's super important. Just repainting. I mean, just pick a different color, to make it stand out, to let people know that it's something different. We were replacing the roof on it, and we were replacing HVAC systems, and we replaced balconies. I mean, we did a ton to the exterior. And landscaping does go a long way as well. We ripped out all these large bushes that were kind of a security issue because they were, at the time when it had a poor reputation, people could hide there. And tenants were afraid of that. And so we got rid of all that stuff and put in, nice, curb appeal type landscaping that really appealed to people in this community and this demographic.
Outstanding. Yep. So lots of lessons learned with that one. All right. And then kind of run short on time here. So I guess you sold that recently and sound like you made a bunch of money, which is great. I love a successful business plan. And then you 1031 into something else, or what's the future for Tony?
Well, so I considered taking the profits from that and 1031 but there's a long story on why I didn't. But essentially, we are putting that capital to good use in a variety of places. So from the 20 unit, we actually had purchased a 60 unit. I've got one partner on that. We've been operating that property for about 2 years. And then about, I guess it was 3 weeks ago-ish, some of that capital that we used from the 20 unit, we invested into a pretty large Class A property with partners. It's a 396 unit deal that is up kind of near the Fort Worth, Texas area. And then we used some of that to put in as a limited partner in a 176 unit deal in the south side of Houston, which that limited partnership opportunity was less about how to make money and get a good return. It was more about, I want to get closer to the partners that were leading that deal. And the best way, in my opinion, to do that is to come in with capital and, learn how they run properties and manage their assets, and hopefully just have one more hook to get a little closer to that team of guys. So we also, as of recent, from the 396 unit that we did, some of the partners from that deal, we worked very well together. And so we basically went off and are doing another deal. So I don't know when exactly this is going to air, but we may even be closed on that by the time this airs. But it's another Class A property. It's in the Houston area. It's a 60 unit, more boutique Class A. In a highly appreciating area of Houston. So we're pretty excited about that, and we're about to get that thing launched.
That's phenomenal. So 9 single families turned into 20 multifamily, turned into hundreds and hundreds of units. And so I'm trying to think of a timeline. So when did you buy the 20 unit?
2018.
And you just sold the 2021. So it was 3 years of that. And that was the only deal you had at the time, or through that period? So you did the refinances, so it's kind of overlaps a little bit, right?
We bought the 60 unit in 2019.
Okay, so got it. So 20 unit, a 60 unit, and then hundreds of units, GP, LP, co-GP.
Correct.
Off to the race. So that's like it sounds like you're like just like hitting that exponential curve, that hockey stick, like you're right at kind of like just like that first step on the upswing of where this thing's about to go over these next 3 years, or these next few years. It's very phenomenal. I love it.
I'm going to do my best to live up to your hockey stick.
Got it. It's got to. The hockey stick is it's going to be great. 2022 is going to be great. Okay, so let's start wrapping this up. What advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
It's a good question because I have almost 20-year-old sons, and I have a 19-year-old stepdaughter as well. So the advice that I'm giving them is, you don't have to follow the standard pathway. Everybody says, get good grades in high school, go to a good college so that you can get a good job so that when you're 65, you can retire and have this retirement account and live happily ever after at 65. That's kind of a really poor way to live, in my opinion. So, of course, go to college if there's something that you're passionate about, and going to school will help you to get into that field and be great at it. But don't feel that that's the only way to make a living. And, if you've got a passion in something else and there's another pathway, such as being an entrepreneur, there's many great ways to get educated. And if you've got the support and you can take action, you can be equally, if not more, successful.
Got it. All right. Great advice. Love it. So transitioning over to the fire round, I'm going to ask the same few questions we asked everybody, and first thing that comes to mind. So what is the best book you recommend other than Rich Dad Poor Dad?
I've actually got two. One is The Honeybee. It's a book that was written by Jake Stenziano and Gino Barbaro.
Got it. That's right there. I got two of them.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, it's one of the yellow ones there. Yeah. And the reason why I like that is because it kind of lets you start thinking about different streams of income. And I think that's super important. You can't just be a one-trick pony. I mean, the game here is being able to support yourself by some diversification and having these different streams of income. And the other book is also yellow. Maybe it's on your shelf. I can't quite see, but it's one of Brandon Turner's books, the book on managing rental properties. And the reason why I like that is it kind of peels back the mystery of, if you do want to manage your own properties, what are all the things you've got to consider? I mean, financially, operationally, from a marketing standpoint, and it just kind of opens you up to realizing that if you're not interested in that, outsource it. There's so many ways to make money in real estate. You do not need to be a landlord. But if that's something that you have a lot of interest in, go for it. I mean, that can certainly be profitable as well. So I really like that book. It kind of, gave me a lot of actionable advice on how to feel comfortable and confident managing my own properties.
Got it. Yep. And that got released. There's two books, right? So it's the book on rental property investing and the book on managing rental property. So those are like the first two books that I've ever read on that like kind of started my journey. So very good books. They don't go into multifamily at all, but I guess give you the idea of what this industry is about, dip your toe in. They're good books. So, all right. What is your superpower?
Oh man, from a mechanical standpoint, I like to say it's the investor relations, it's the capital raising. It's something that I'm developing as a superpower. I think I'm pretty good at it, and I see where it could go, and I'm really doubling down on it. I'm taking action right now to get better at that. Beyond that, I love coaching and mentoring and just helping others who are trying to get into the space or get better at their business. And so however I can add value to them, it's just something I enjoy. It helps me get excited every day.
Awesome. Good stuff. Helping out the go-giver. Tony. What is the biggest lesson you've learned over your career?
I think it's kind of let your guard down a little bit, allow yourself to be vulnerable, allow yourself to recognize gaps that you have and don't be afraid of that. I mean, just embrace it so that others who want to help can help, and that you can take the advice. And for me, it's always about listening to different perspectives and then kind of twisting and turning that and kind of taking the greatest hits, if you will, and then moving forward with that. And so you're never going to hear that kind of advice if you don't let yourself be vulnerable. And so that's tough, right? We all have egos, and especially the longer we're in this space, the more impressive we think we are. But, there's always somebody who's been there, done it more than we have.
Yep. Love it. And for the busy working professional who's working towards their own financial freedom, what advice or tips do you have for them?
I think, we hear this all the time, take action, but that is super important, that you can get educated, and you have to start with education. But if you don't do anything with it, even something small, then it's just going to kind of atrophy. And so I always like to break down goals. I've got monthly goals that every week I'm breaking those down and putting my weekly goals out there. And then every day I look at my weekly goals and I translate those into daily actions. It's just a process, a method that I use so that every day I'm taking some small incremental action toward a bigger goal. Because big goals can be intimidating, but when you break them down into something you can do, a little every day, it's not so bad.
Got it. Great advice. So that's all we have for the show. Do you have anything for our guests? How can they reach out to you?
Absolutely. Yes. So I'm on LinkedIn and all the socials, but they can also reach out directly to me via email at Tony, Tony, at Novo, Novo, multifamilygroup.com, or then go straight to our website at novomultifamilygroup.com, and they can get a hold of us there.
Outstanding. I'm sure you'll get some good outreach. This has been an outstanding episode. I love it. Can't wait for the part 2 of this, because we during that brainstorming pre-show, we had more topics than time. So I'm excited for the round 2 of this episode here. But for now, thanks for joining.
All right. Awesome, Vince. Thanks for having me.
Yep. Man, that was a phenomenal show with Tony. Great guy, extremely smart, very organized, well put together. Love his path. And the lessons he learned going from single family to multifamily, and then going that 20 unit and scaling huge up to multiple large multifamily assets. And recently he threw in there a 60 unit, a 390 something unit. So he's definitely having an exponential growth in his company. And it's great to see another person, hitting that exponential growth through multifamily real estate. And so excited to have Tony on the show. And like I said, we're going to be doing multiple. Before, we were on air, we were kind of brainstorming topics, and he threw out like 6 topics that are all make great episodes. So I told him we're going to have him back on soon. So look out for that second episode with Tony. So we can take down some of his other topics that he has a lot of value to bring to the community. So if you're interested in this show, if you like it, please like and subscribe this podcast, share it with your friends and family. We're trying to grow our community here and continue to add value. So please share and subscribe and like on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you're listening to. Get the word out. And if you want to know more about our company, Tri-City Equity Group, go to tricityequity.com, see what we do in the commercial real estate space. Jump on a call with us. I'm Vince Gething, so you can reach out and connect with me on there, schedule a call. We can just jump on a call and kind of see what your goals are, and if we can help, and if not, where the best place to kind of get you to achieve your goals are. So happy to do that and offer that to our community. And then also we're super excited for our upcoming conference, the Hawaii Millionaires Mindset Conference, codenamed the Blueprint. It's going to be a phenomenal conference. I think it's going to be the best one in 2022 because the content's going to be the best. We got the, world-class speakers and educators that are coming out. And then also because the location, I don't think there's going to be a better location conference in all of 2022. This is going to be in Ko'olina, Hawaii, on the island of Oahu. It's 4 seasons. They got their own lagoons. They have Disney Alani's next door. We have rooms set aside in both, I think the Marriott Resort, the Disney Alani Resort, and the Four Seasons Resort. So you can say right there on the resort, world class. Definitely Google it right now, Ko'olina, Hawaii, and tell me you don't want to be there July 21st, 24th, 2022. So you can go reach out to us for tickets or go to the Millionaires Mindset Blueprint.com and register to get tickets there. I think we're still doing early bird at the time of this recording, which is December 21. I don't think it's going to last too much longer for the early bird pricing. So you're definitely going to want to reach out to register and get those tickets, and we'll see you out there. So again, this is Vince Gethings, Tri-City Equity Group, and this has been a great episode, and see you next time.